So this talk is called How to Automatically Take Back Control of Your Personal Finance. And my name is Eirik Folkestad, for those of you who don't know me. And well, so what is this talk about? If you're like me, sometimes you you go to the store and you're about to pay, or you try to pay, and then your card is declined. That's not really fun, but and then I try to find out or figure out how where all my money went, and then I check my bank or my internet bank, and there's usually some sort of like overview of what you have spent your money on in form of a pie chart or something like that. But usually it's not very good, and a lot of your transactions is labeled under the other category, like the yellow there. And so this talk is about how we can improve categorization of your personal spendings. So first of all, why are these pie charts so bad, or this overview? Well, it's usually because, or to my experience, it's usually because the banks usually label all of your, or the transactions manually. Like if it's Kiwi 100 kroner, then it's usually like it should be groceries, but if it's like something that nobody has ever labeled, some coffee shop nobody knows the name of, then it's most likely just gonna place it in the other category. So the solution to this could be automation, or it should be. And yeah, so how do we apply automation to this process of labeling transactions? Well, we do this with machine learning, and also with the help of other data sources, which provide useful data in terms of classification. So how does a typical transaction text look like? This is what I try to categorize the transactions based on. So this is a typical transaction. It says something like Kiwi and some other text, which is not really necessary to have, but it's usually there for unknown reasons. And then you want to categorize it into its respective category, so like groceries for Kiwi. So how do we apply machine learning to this problem? Well, first of all, like you saw here, we don't really need all of the text there to, as a human, to know what this is, because we know the concept Kiwi. So what we can do first of all is just strip away unnecessary things in the transaction text, like numbers and like abbreviations for something that's only useful for the bank or something. It doesn't really say what the transaction was. And then we can represent the text in some other way, which can be used by a machine learning model. So a really popular representation, and also highly regarded, even though it's really simple. It's one strategy is called bag of words representation of the text. And the way this works is that you say you gather all the words in all your transactions, then you have your vocabulary. This is just a simplified example, if all the words you have is dog, man, walking, ice cream, is, then and you want to represent a text with a bag of words, then you would first make an array where each word in the vocabulary has its own place in this array, and then it's just labeled 0, for example, or false, or something like that. And then, like you see there, dog, man, walking, ice cream, is, and order is very important because when you want to represent the text dog is walking man, then you would check off every word that's in the text from the vocabulary. Yeah. So that means, yeah, like you see that 1101, that means every word is present except for ice cream. Yeah. And then after some experimenting with different machine learning models, logistic regression actually worked the best. And the way it works is it's a binary classifier. It classifies whether something belongs to a class or not. And if you want to do this in terms of a multi-class problem, you would have to have one solution to this is to have one logistic regression model for each class. So you would say kiwi belongs to groceries, or it doesn't belong to groceries. And if you want to have another category, you would do the same. And the one with the highest probability of being in a class, that's the class you choose. And this is called the one versus rest scheme. And also feed-forward neural networks work just as good, but this just proves that the data is linearly separable, which this is because a feed-forward neural network will produce the same results as a logistic regression model, as long as this is true. And it just means that you don't need non-linearities that a feed-forward neural network needs. Yeah, and the way, or the data set that I used for this project was of size 220,000 transactions, so it's not exactly your personal transactions, but yeah. And by training it on, I think it was 80% of the transactions, I achieved an accuracy of 89.2% correct classifications. But this is kind of a fairly simple approach, so I wanted to introduce some extra data sources to maybe up the accuracy. So then I introduced something called, or a data set from Brønnøysundregistrene, which contains a code of what industry the different companies operate in. So yeah, this is very, very useful for classification. And the way I used it was to download the whole registry and just index it locally. So I could just look it up every time I needed something from there. And I also tried other data sources, Wikidata and DBpedia. And this contains knowledge about everything, like all entities. But unfortunately, this was not a very good idea because it's an ongoing, like, open source project. So everything is like not the way it should be. So yeah, and it just introduced a lot of noise into the data set, so it just the accuracy actually went down. But by introducing Brønnøysundregistrene, we could see an increase of almost 3% accuracy. It's not really that much, but it's yeah, but it's something. It's an increase. So I wanted to do one last improvement, and that was to introduce Google Places. I used the Google Places API, but and it contains much of the same information that Brønnøysundregistrene does, because it also has some information about different shops and yeah, a lot of stuff like Brønnøysundregistrene does. But the problem with this is that I couldn't download it, so I couldn't kind of use their API on 220,000 transactions. So it was only used for like post-processing, where Brønnøysund, or the model, the logistic regression model with the use of the Brønnøysundregistrene was sufficiently, what's the word, inconfident, not confident. Then it would also kind of do some sort of voting process with a Google Places result. So then we got 1 extra point in accuracy. But why was it not better than this? So I did like a sanity check where I manually labeled a subset of a random subset of the transactions, and I also just reached like 93% accuracy, because there's a lot of data missing and other reasons you can't find the company and stuff like that on the internet. So it's almost as good as it can get. So that's why I couldn't get it higher than 7%. And yeah, so that justifies the results in the end. So this is one one way I could do this, or automate the process of labeling transactions. And yeah, so now, yeah, and we reached the same accuracy as a human could, so that's really good. And you could, yeah, you should be able to produce better results with this approach than most banks would, I think, unless they use the same. So now you can take automatically take back control of your personal finance, or at least find out why you're broke. So if you want to read more about this, you can just read my master thesis, or the 2 articles published alongside it. Yeah. Any questions?
So did you have like a predefined group of labels, or?
Yeah.
Okay, so how many labels? Do you remember?
I think it was 11.
Okay.
And we also had some subcategories, but in this project we chose to look away from, or not use those, because it was like 50 or something.
Okay.
And yeah.
And did you use like the actual amount of money to do the prediction also, or just the text string?
We did. We used, I used only the text, but you could use the amount of money also. But we tried it, but it actually just didn't make sense, because it's kind of independent of where you would think that if you buy something for like 50 kroner, then it would be some sort of groceries or anything like that. But if it's like 10,000, then it's the new TV or something. And but it was just didn't give any like pattern. So yeah.
However, this kind of looked like an impossible task, though, because you have like grocery stores selling non-grocery stuff. So it would be kind of misleading if I went to Coop Mega and bought myself a new grill, which they actually sell, and that would be labeled as groceries.
Yeah, but you bought it at. Yeah, but how would I know that?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. This looks kind of like an important task to classify it correctly, but yeah.
That's impossible. That's true.
Yeah.
But that's actually, and it doesn't. It's not reflected in the transaction.
No,
text,
of course not.
You just can't.
Of course
know.
not.
But you can label it as, okay, I spent that much money on a grocery store.
At this store, yeah.
Thank
you.
All right. No more questions?